I was asked to come and talk to you about my work as a muralist. That's a big honor for me. I know y'all are busy and you got a lot of stuff going on and you're learning things every day. So it's an honor for me to get to talk to you a little bit about what I do. Um, I'm a grown up now, but I started doing art when I was uh, a kid like you, and I consider myself sort of, my art today, these days, is just the same stuff that I've always been drawing. Um, I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's see what I can do here. Keynote. View. See what I can do here. Actually, you're going to see a bunch of my art really fast, and then we'll start at the beginning. I'm starting with someone else's work, my mom was a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. A lot of my aunts are teachers. I taught a little bit at the community college in Albuquerque. And can everybody see the black screen with Carl Kurtz's name? You're going to have to unmute and tell me because I'm in full screen mode myself.
Yes, we can see it.
And so I don't know that I was always really good at school or loved school especially, but it was really important to me. The idea of learning and my relationship with my teachers was always important. In our culture, the friendships that we make among the other students last a lifetime, and that's how we sort of figure out who we are. Are we good at drawing? Are we good at soccer? Are we good at math? Are we good at English? And I think it's important to develop lots of skills. But I found from an early age that I liked to draw and I was encouraged to draw. So even when I was in maybe the second or third grade, I became aware that drawing was something I was supposed to be working on. And so in this culture, we learn to sort of like develop and to work hard. And so my art was always something that I tried to do. When I finally got to college, my first teacher was a guy named Carl Kurtz, and this is the kind of art he made. He knew how to do a lot of things like race motorcycles and do photography, but he learned to make letters from his dad, who was a sign painter up in North Dakota, and he started to teach himself calligraphy. And so these are a bunch of letters and words arranged in a circle, and they come from a poem that was written about Christianity, and it's about sort of like love. And so the outer ring of letters says, we must love one another or die. And the inner circle just says, love one another. And I've always really sort of appreciated Carl as a teacher. He helped me understand what I wanted to do with my life. And he was so thoughtful and sensitive toward me as a young sort of artist that I just really always knew the sort of power of his teaching. So when I try to teach or talk to students, I think of him teaching me as sort of the best energy that I can put forward. A bunch of years later, I started making pictures like this. I think that his work has always sort of affected me. Things that are beautiful but complicated and take a long time to look at is something I got from him. This is there's like a little animal in the middle of the picture you might be able to see. That's kind of a little ferret. And this is actually based off of a Renaissance painting by Leonardo da Vinci. Here's another sort of landscape. You might be able to see a tree. And then if you kind of look through the tree, you can see a car in the background. And then in the foreground, there's some sort of wiggly looking cartoon people, and they're having a lunch. But all of these sort of forms, these wiggly sort of forms in some ways, I think of as inspired by Carl's letters. When I started teaching too at the college level, I learned about the history of art and how the Italians, in particular, love to paint their ceilings. This would be like a dome over a church. And I started wanting to paint walls too. So I started trying to paint murals here and murals there and entering competitions. And I got to win a couple of awards to paint some buildings. These are down near the railroad tracks downtown. And on these, I use sort of the shape of the building to make it look like the person that you were seeing inside the building. Even though everything's black and white, sort of a cartoon language. I also work with other artists. This is David Lee, and David Lee teaches high school at Albuquerque High, and he teaches art classes there. And we decided to make these funny cartoon style sort of paintings on plywood and then cut them out, and then we could arrange them together almost like stickers on a really big wall. Here's from the same show. And then so we could build, we actually built a curved wall and then stapled all the thin pieces of plywood to them. And we thought it would be funny to have lots of different things like popsicles and skeletons and snakes and birds, all sort of like jumbled together like this. It's called a collage. I do other things besides being an artist. One of the things I've always, for a long time, I've been a carpenter. And so building curved walls was something I knew how to do. You might have a passion or for singing or art or something like that. And you, throughout your life, you might be compelled to do other things for money. And I think that usually is okay. Some people are really built to do one thing. I feel like I was built to do a lot of things. And sometimes art, you're just by yourself painting stuff. And I do like people, and I like interacting with people, and I like helping people. So doing construction was always a lot of fun for me. Because these pieces of plywood were just, we could store them and take them other places. So we'd show them in Santa Fe, and then here's a show in Texas that we did. There's a different show we did in Arizona, in Phoenix, also in Phoenix, and another installation shot. So David would paint the robot, and David would paint the peppermints, but I would paint the kitten and the skeleton or something like that. So we would all bring different parts that we painted and stick them together. I also was lucky enough to paint the picture across the street from your school, if I understand where y'all are at. And so it's on the side of the art store. And I used the word Albuquerque, but I used an older spelling that has an extra R. And I wanted to sort of help people remember that there was an older spelling of how we used to say this. And you sometimes hear people refer to Albuquerque as Burke, and that word you can find is spellable from the old spelling. Used to have an extra R, and in the middle of the word, the R has a few extra. It's a little wobbly looking, and it has some extra light rays coming out from it. I also painted I use kind of a comic book style where there's lots of black dots and sort of swirls up in the sky, which is kind of a comic book look. And then the outlines around things like the coyote or the hummingbird that's drinking out of the cactus flower. Those are all kind of comic book styles of drawing. I also painted like the side of a bus barn at a high school in a place called Marfa, Texas. And I used the wobbly metal of the barn as a way of organizing lines. And then by painting thicker and thinner lines, I could help make a picture. So there's like an old guy here pointing to another picture where people are hugging. and then there's another skeleton there. You can see the big snake on the end of the building. And then on this end, there's some people in a pool of water with mountains in the background. And so for this, I used a computer to help me sort of create the line pattern, translating some images and drawings that I'd made. And then I just went and started painting stripes. It took almost a month. I had to live down there. And then you see I've got a pickup in the background. And in the back of the pickup is a ladder and a scaffold. And so I would drive up and down the wall, and that's how I painted. And I'd have a ladder. It's a lot of fun to do this stuff, but it's also a lot of work. More mountains and trees and things like that with a waterfall. And then I don't know if any of y'all have been to Meow Wolf in Santa Fe, but at the end of the hallway near the bathrooms, I have a mural that looks like this. And I painted the eyeballs so that they look down the hallway. And it was just and then floating in a bunch of big squiggles like that. When I start these, on this one, it was really fun. Some of my murals come out really good, and it's kind of easy. Some of them I really struggle with, and I'm never really happy. But this was one where I just painted a circle for the eye, and then I just started painting a bunch of squiggles and dots, and it just kept getting better and better. And so I like it when it comes out easy. I made T-shirts for that too. So when you have a design, artists these days learn to work on computers too. And so even though I was trained not using a computer, I know a little bit how to take pictures and sort of, and then so I have a printer that I work with here in town to make T-shirts. At the Albuquerque Museum, I got to make this painting on the wall, and I wanted it to look like a picture that was hung on a wall, but that you could see into. And then so they had a brighter light that shined on the inside of the picture. I also did some Santa drawings. Christmas is coming up, and so I helped make a Santa Claus card. And then most recently in Albuquerque, I'm working on a mural right now that's almost finished, and this one's downtown, and it has a butterfly on top of a cactus flower with kind of a black and white rainbow over a mountain, and then there's like a geometric swirly thing that for me represents like a thunderstorm with rain coming out of it. This is another one of those designs. This is actually like a picture of my computer screen. And so this is another mural design I'm working on for here in Roswell, where I live. I've lived in Roswell for 3 years, even though I was in Albuquerque for like 14 years. And so that's me working on the computer. This is another computer thing that I've been working on, and I'll bring in some photos and then draw a little and sort of build a landscape like this. And so both these images, a lot of my work recently is about rain and how water moves through the landscape and provides life for all living things on land. We all depend on the rains to come and bring the water to the mountains and for it to flow across the land and give everything life. And in the foreground here, you can see on the right, there's a little dragonfly. So I like to hide things in the picture. If you look at the big tree on the other side of the picture, there's a little person next to it. So as I develop these, I'll sort of create little moments and stories within the big picture. I think that's the end of my slides that I brought for you today. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Well, I make lots of paintings that, like the ones hanging on the wall right here. And so It would probably be like thousands of them now because I might do little ones. And, if I've been making art like 20, 30 years or 30 or 40 years, and then I'll make one every few days or something like that, it ends up being like thousands of drawings. Sometimes I'll find an old piece of paper and I'll forget that I even ever drew that. Well, I draw a lot with India ink, like just black ink, and I use a brush. I could do all these with like a marker, but I like a brush because you can make really uh, fat marks with it. And so I buy paint. Uh, One big bottle of ink will last it will make a whole lot of drawings.
Why do you only paint in black and white? Why do you not use colors?
Oh, that's a really good question. Because I kind of work fast and it takes a long time to mix colors. Um, it gets really, 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 really complicated because if you want to represent like a whole scene out there, you might have to mix hundreds of colors. And if you get one wrong, you kind of have to remix a bunch of them. And I really like working fast. So I gravitated toward black and white. I'm also sort of good at drawing, and other people are really good at color. So it's kind of like if you were going to be a musician, I'm probably really good. I would play the drums, and I wouldn't play the violin, where you have to have like a really good ear, and instead you could just have a really good sense of rhythm. I just want to thank you all for being good listeners and to wish you all luck. It's really exciting to be young and learning and a kid. And I look forward to seeing what y'all do. Have fun, stick with it, dream big, and we'll see you soon.